Interview and job search strategies that work. In this podcast, I'd like to talk to you about getting a job anywhere, basically. And more importantly, I'd like to focus in on computer science degree. So those of you who are going out and getting your degree in computer science, particularly the ones who live in Asia, that's who I'm focusing right now. I want to talk to you about strategies on how you can get a job, and not only in the States, but it'll apply as well in other countries such as Canada and Australia. So first things first, in your school, you have about probably 100 students, something like that. Let's assume that you have 100 students. So your competition is 100 people or 99 in that matter. So if you're going to computer science, I can tell you, here's the skills that you need to have. You really have to have them. C++ is very critical, so you have to know that. You have to know the theory behind that. And I'll go over a couple of courses that I pulled from one of the courses in Batangas University, and I want to go over that. Okay, it's a Bachelor of Science in Information Technology, BSIT. So the first course is an Introduction to Computing. It's called IT 111. So there's a couple different resources for that. Udemy, of course, Udemy, Khan Academy. More importantly, other things like learning on your own, teaching yourself. If you're not able to do that, I know there's lots of simulators out there that you can use. Not a lot, but there's Linux simulators online, and there's some Windows simulators online that you could go in and play for free. Basically, just get your understanding of how computing works a little bit. Now, I know that's dealing more with like probably talking about, hey, here's the binary part, such as like and or NAND, maybe some gates in there, maybe some of the history of computing, maybe going back to Linux, Unix, Bell Labs, back in time there. Maybe when it started, I think it was Alan Turing, who started or who made it possible, like computing basically happened, going back to maybe Babbage, all the way back to probably the abacus. So the other course is Math 103, which is college algebra. Now, of course, you need algebra if you're in IT. You need to know coding. You need to know some algebra because some of the functions are the same, of course. Let's move on past that. So you got Math 121, which is probability and statistics. And then you have English 100, which is English Plus. So, of course, that's more than just, hey, here's how you learn English. I'm pretty sure it has more to deal with like how to interact or certain ways to say things, or maybe certain phrases. And also probably has to do with reading and comprehension. So be able to read a report, maybe read a tech manual, and then comprehend it and kind of tell your team about it or tell your colleagues about it and kind of regurgitate it to them. That's what it deals with. That I would say that skill is very high up there and is really needed for you. And you got to understand that you speak two languages. Most likely you speak English and you speak your native tongue. And, you know, most people in the States only speak one. So just know that. That's just how it is, right? And of course, you're going to have it to where people look at you and you don't know, and they're going to treat you a certain way. And that's just how it is. That's just how it is, you know. It's not like that probably in your country or wherever you're from, but that's just how it is here. That's just the way it is. Anyway, so you can either look at it and talk about it and blah, blah, blah. Or you can say, you know what? I get it. Let me work my way around it because I see that as a obstacle. Let me work past that actually. So the other one is Introduction to Humanities and Art Appreciation. I get it. Maybe it's a curricular activity. Okay, you need to throw it in there. I get it. They just need to throw something else in there. So I get it. Perhaps it's useful. Introduction to Humanities could be like, how do cultures work? How do different cultures interact? How do they think? What are the traits of different cultures? The other one, which I think is really critical, so I put that up with like maybe a 1A, and that's SS 101, which is general psychology. So that one is so critical in the IT department, so critical, because I'll tell you, your perspective is like how some of the West view the Asian types is this: the introverted type, you know, you very firm with family, not critical thinkers, not free thinkers, not go with the crowd. Whatever the crowd does, you do. Not really a leader. That's probably, of course, that's not true for everybody, right? By the way, it's just what the West, the assumption is, right? So not everybody, just, a herd. And so the introduction to, the general psychology will really help you to understand how to read people and really understand that, like, not everybody has passion. Not everybody has ambition. Maybe you have ambition and you want to do something, but not everybody wants to do that. You'd be surprised if you come to the States to see people who are like working and they complain about their job. They complain about how much money they don't have. And these are people who are natively born here or whatever. And you're a foreign person that comes here. You're an immigrant, let's say, and then you come here and you work hard to come here. And yet these people here are complaining about their jobs or they don't have enough money. And you're like, wait a minute, you have all this opportunity available to you. Well, I'll tell you, in their mind, they don't. And understanding that, and, some do, some don't. That's just how it is. I don't know why other people don't. I don't know why other people do. I have no idea. And that's just how it is. So understanding that and maybe coming to grips with it, everybody probably has that, where, you have a relative or a friend who you're like, oh, if they would just do this, they would get it. They would make it happen, Captain. But they just don't. And, that's just how it is. At any rate, moving on. So a couple resources for that. There's 7 Strategies for Wealth and Happiness with Jim Rohn. In some of his talks, he talks about like, why do some do and some don't? And he goes like, I wouldn't buy that. Basically, he's saying, I wouldn't go down that rabbit hole. Okay, just focus on people who do. Focus on people who resonate with you versus that. And it's going to sound I guess it's going to sound a little cold to say that, because there are those out there who don't know what they want, and they want you to just listen until, like 3 or 4 times later, then they'll take action, or then they'll do it, right? And that can be hard, actually, by the way, because when you see something and you see individuals who maybe say you're in IT field and they're not in an IT field, and you're like, it's so easy to get a job in IT, especially, if you're in the States, let's say, and they're like, oh, it's so hard to get a job, and they're working at McDonald's or something like that, right? And you can see how easy it is, but they can't. And whatever they listen to is a reflection on maybe their attitude, or whoever they listen to, basically. Maybe the people they're around as well, because, you got to figure, if they're working at McDonald's or whatever, and they're complaining about their life, that there's no opportunities, what does that say? Is that something about them, that they're not, maybe they're having a bad day. Maybe there's one little thing they haven't gotten over, that maybe they don't feel valued themselves. Maybe they just, it's too much stress for them. Maybe there was an experience they had before where there was an opportunity and there was a risk involved, so they didn't want to take that risk. And, to most people, that's a risk. Changing jobs, getting, even it's more money, it's a risk. And some people just don't want to take the risk, even if it's more. They just like, they're good. And I get that, right? The other book I'll say is The Richest Man in Babylon. That's an audio book as well, right? And as well as a couple more, actually. Industry Influencer Road Trip, Keys to Success, 17 Principles of Personal Achievement, and anything by Cheeky Tan. He's a wealth coach. He's out of, I think, Batangas or Manila, I think he works out of. So the other course is physical education, gymnastics, aerobics. Okay, we get that, right? Okay, here's the next one, CS 111. This is computer programming. So this one's really one you want to pay attention to. This is the one that you want to come in late or you want to come in early and stay late for. Because this is one of those core curriculums that you really need to learn. So they're probably going to teach you about C++, the history, of course, of programming, and those things. So on this one, while you're going to school, the next one is CSS 111, which is computer programming. So computer programming is really critical with your job, really critical. And what do you learn there? You're going to learn, of course, C++ with programming. You're going to learn the history of computer programming, how it started, how it got its, why it's important, why it was important, what's the benefit of it, the why. This is one of those classes where you want to go in early and stay late for. This is one of those critical courses that you definitely would be beneficial for you, basically, right? So moving on, Math 107, that's plain trigonometry. So basically it's just, I think it has to do with physical trigonometry. So for instance, shapes but I think it's more in depth. It has less about theory and more about maybe looking at something to do with structures, physical structures, how to maybe code them, maybe has something to do with that. The other one is English 102, which is study and thinking skills. So this goes back to English 101, English 100 rather, which was talking about how to, comprehend. So reading and comprehension, thinking about, learning about what am I reading here? Because when you get to IT, when computer, basically just computer programming or IT in general, you're going to get some stuff out there who like, oh, okay, that's what I need to do, and you're going to have to regurgitate it and maybe ask questions. Because I'll tell you, a lot of people in the IT field, they just this is majority. Let me just tell you that, right? IT, they like to know, like they'll ask a lot of questions like, okay, let me understand. And you'll run into ones that are just like, for instance, they'll reply to your message or something like that and be like, oh, let me know the status in this. Like there's no context there. There's no reference point. So you have the ability to just tactfully reach out and say, can you let me know, or would you mind letting me know what is you're talking about tactfully? What do you, when you mention this, what do you actually mean, right? So this actually should probably be more like a email course, like how to properly email. I think that's really something that's really needed. And not to, just to get the point across, basically. Okay, moving on. Humanities 102, Introduction to Philosophy. This one's a really cool one. This goes back to general psychology. How people think, what are their cultures, their philosophies, how they approach different things. And in IT, I'll tell you, what you run into is they are very logical, especially programmers. They just think logically. Now, there are emotions, of course, in there, but a lot of times they are just logical thinkers. Like, okay, this doesn't make sense. Or they want to just like solve. They're trying to solve for X, right? And what you might want to say, sometimes I always say this is, somebody says like to you something, and they're looking for you to get mad, or they're looking for you to solve their problem. Basically, they want to anger you, or they want you to solve the problem. So what you might want to say is like something like this, right? Here we go. Would you like a logical response, an emotional response? That's what you tell them to whatever they said. Like they said, like, hey, I don't have enough money to buy shoes, and I don't like it. I need a better job and whatever. And you might want to say, if it's directed at you, it's like, hey, you might want to say like, if they look for your response, you say, would you like an emotional response or a logical response? Because I can give you both. I can tell you an emotional response is, oh yeah, I understand. The company doesn't give us enough money. They should give us more. Now the logical response would be, well, perhaps if you got a better job, or if you saved extra income, or if you had a side hustle, you would have enough money to buy those shoes. That's the example of a logical response. So, which actually leads into the next one, Humanities 104, which is logic. So logic is not necessarily logic response. It's more like the computer logic, how the binaries work, how the from like an in-out standpoint, like all computers are just ones and zeros. It's an on or off, basically, right? So that's what goes into a little more. A better understanding of this would be, or how you would want to understand it, perhaps, is to Google something or watch a YouTube video about semiconductors and how the actual chips are made. This will really give you, it's more of why. Okay, that's how chips are made. And this is why programming is important, because of, the programmer can do this because this device, chip can do this, right? The next one is IT 211, database management systems. So in this one, C++ as well, but this deals with more like probably MySQL or an open source database. So databases are needed. By the way, there's only four databases in the world, programs, right? You have Oracle, which, you have Oracle. You have MySQL. You have SQL Server, which is Microsoft SQL. And then you have DB2, which is IBM. So out of four databases in the whole in the world. Now there are ones that offset of those, but those are the main four ones. So those are the ones that the companies, they have the brand, they're legitimized, they have validation, basically, right? All of those. So Oracle owns actually two. They own Oracle and they own MySQL. So they got two there right there out of the way. So really there's only three companies. So again, you have Oracle, you have Microsoft, and you have IBM. And they own it, basically, right? Most of your databases for Oracle, those are for like finance. They run some applications. So SQL, most of like your SharePoint, most of like your Active Directory, most of your, let's see, yeah, some of those. I know some software applications run that as well. Some content management systems as well run that. And then IBM DB2, I don't really have I don't have a lot of experience with that, but it's a pretty big, I know it's a pretty big deal as well. And anything IBM is usually cumbersome. There's a lot of money involved in it, and they probably need a lot of individuals who know it. So you have a good job. I think I think DB2 might be used in AS400, I believe. So moving on. So IT 222, Advanced Database Manager Systems. Same thing for database manager systems. You have three companies and four databases: Oracle, MySQL, Microsoft SQL, and DB2. So that's just more of the database manager systems. CS 121 is Advanced Computer Programming. Here we go. What this gets involved with now, mind you, this is the second year, I believe. So this is in like your year 2, by the way. So by your second year, Advanced Computer Programming. What does that mean exactly? Break it down for me, right? Okay. Well, let's go over it, right? So advanced computer programming could mean something like taking a website, maybe building a stack, if you will. For instance, you might have you might build something with C++, like a program, and then you might also have it writes to a database, or maybe you might have a WordPress site. That's, for example, that writes to a database. Like website writes data to website. That's an example of advanced computer programming. Although it's in the real world perspective, it's a lot of coding. So you're a programmer, you probably won't be in your job fixing websites, most likely. You'll be in the back end doing code development, just doing a little bit of upgrades for code, or just going through code and making it more efficient. And so that's a little bit about advanced computer programming. So then the next one's IT 412, integrative programming and technologies. Wow. So what's that? What does that mean? That means probably most likely it means taking C++. And how do I make it work with Java? How do I make it work with WordPress? How do I make it work with this application in the world, on the marketplace? Interactive programming technologies. That's what it means to me. There's some resources that I have as well on this podcast that you'll see that I posted as well. So you can link to it. The next one is CSS, or CS 122, which is data structures and algorithms. Wow. So this one I don't know a lot about, but I know that algorithms are very, when you interview for a computer science job, or like a job at Google or Facebook or pretty much anywhere that is programming, they ask you about algorithms. So because algorithms are the standard, companies use the same algorithm. I know one that I've heard about does like a find and replace. That's an algorithm, and you're going to have to know what they do. And there's like 4 or 5 typical ones that they ask on interviews for algorithms. But that's really something to know. That's one of those other courses that you want to go in early and stay late for, because that's really, really critical, right? By the way, the next one is CS 131. That's object-oriented programming. I believe that's Java. I think Java uses object-oriented programming, I believe. So I have a couple of videos on Java on my YouTube channel. Just go to youtube.com and just type in Gary McNeely. Have a couple of videos on Java, the introduction to Java, how that works. The next course is Bio 101, Introduction to Biology. So, okay, biology. You need biology, I guess, elective. So let's just throw it out there. Okay. You really ain't going to talk about that because that's not really that's not really related to IT, although you probably need it in this regard because it's something that they want as a curriculum. So let's move on from that. The next one is Engineering 106, which is Technical Communication. Here's a real critical one right here. How do you talk to non-techs, basically? How do you get the message from a non-technical person to a manager or a leader, basically, right? You talk to the technical person and they, give you this information and you're okay, I got it, right? And then you take that information and then you give it to your leadership and say, this is what we're doing, basically. You're explaining in regard. You're also, you can take technical communication as being as well as standing in a room, having meetings, be able to converse with other individuals, non-technical and technical, about what you're doing and explain it in a way that makes sense to them. So basically, you can have everything you want in life if you just help enough people get what they want. That's to sum up this one here. And finally, the next one is IT 221, which is Fundamentals of Networking. So this doesn't mean how do you network, social networking. This means like how networking works in an environment. Basically, introduction, you might want to call something like, there can be algorithms as well, because in some of the routing, it has like, I think Dijkstra's algorithm, I think it is. It's not Lenny Dykstra. That was a baseball player a long time ago. I watched a video about the Phillies, and that was a baseball player. Him and John Kruk and some other guy. Curt Schilling, I think it was. Anyway, that was way back in the day. But I watched a YouTube video recently about that. Anyway, so fundamentals of networking. Dijkstra's algorithm. A lot of like OSPF, I believe, uses that. At any rate, Juniper, a lot of your vendors use a form of Dijkstra's algorithm to pass traffic throughout the network. And really, if you think about it, networking as a whole is all it is code. You're taking this packet, you're taking something and routing it here, and it just uses type of coding. I don't know if it's machine coding or whatever, but it is able to take that packet and able to push it from one point to the other. And it's a program essentially what that is. So let's get back to the meat and potatoes of this talk actually. So that's all the courses there. So let's talk about this. So you're one of 100 students in your college, right? And you're taking computer science. So a couple different things you want to have in your repertoire, basically, right? So I'll tell you. So definitely you're in your first year, and I'm talking to you. You know who I'm talking to. First things first. I know that you work, you work 5 days a week, right? Or whatever, and you go to school and you're tired, right? But take about an hour a week. First take an hour a week and then, move it up to 4 hours a week. And then from there, try to get in 3-4 hour sessions a week. So you have 12 hours, right? So start with just one thing, or first do one thing. The very first thing you're going to need to have is you need to have a GitHub site. You got to have a GitHub site. Without that, you got to be able to differentiate yourself from your competition, and I'd start day one. Same thing. You have your resume out there, you don't have a CV, you have a resume, and you're acting as if you're already in the States. You're not telling them you're not, but what you're after the interview. That's all you want right there. That's all you want. So if you have a GitHub site, you can give that to them, and it's like, oh, that's something tangible that they can see. They say, oh, okay, I can see they have a GitHub site. I see you have something on there. You have a couple repositories. Maybe you fork like EasyCRT, and then you just fork it, and then it's there, and you create your own repository for someone else. Maybe you create your own simple program. So maybe when you go to some of these courses that you take, for instance, let's take one. Let's take CS 111. So computer programming. In computer programming, if they teach you a program, put that code out there. Create that code, put it in GitHub, done, right? The other thing, the next one, so that's the first thing. Very first, just start with one. Don't get overwhelmed here. Just start with one. So slowly but surely get GitHub, then Reddit, then Twitter, then Medium, then and Pinterest, and TikTok, WordPress. Got to have a WordPress site, definitely. Those are free. And then YouTube channel, and then finally a Teachable course or a Udemy course that you create. So why do I tell you all this? What's the point here, right? So basically, you're going to go and you're going to interview with somebody in the States. And you're in your first year. And you need to know, what do I need to know? Because I don't know I need to know what my skills are. Second thing that happens is when you're interviewing with these people, it's almost like what am I saying? I'm saying like this. You're not in shock, but you're almost like at a disadvantage, if you will, basically, because you in your mind, I assume that you think, okay, they're in the States, they know a lot, and they're just an IT, they're just HR, basically. This is HR people you're talking to. So once you get past them, okay, I know how to do that. Because right away, what's going to happen is right away, they're probably going to read your name and they're going to think, oh, Asian, right? They're going to think a couple of things. Not always. I'm just saying, right? Prepare for this, right? Just prepare for this. And you want to have it to where you can just talk to them like you've been in the States your whole life, basically, right? That's what you want to get after, by the way. That's the whole point here, right? Get after the point where you're talking to them like you're in the States. And if you have to ask, like, I'm sorry, what did you say? Or, if you say, oh, okay, yeah, sure. And you don't wait for the pauses. Because, like, for instance, they'll ask you a question and you say, oh, yeah, sure. What would be better to say is, oh, it's like this. Yeah, I've done a little bit of that. For instance, something like they might want to ask, like, have you done C++ before? And you say, yeah, sure, I have. Yeah, yep. Instead of being, kind of excited like that, what you want to do is you want to say, like, oh, well, I've used, and they might want to say, like, oh, have you used C++? What you'll say is this. You say, I have used C++. We use version, I think 14 or whatever the version is now, or 17. I have a GitHub site as well that I I use to create codes as well, and then stop there and let them ask a question like, "Oh, I have a GitHub site." You say those might want to say, "What's that?" And you say, "Well, that's a repository for a lot of coders. What they have, they may or may not know what that is. By the way, I have to explain it to them." So that's that. When you get to and that's your gatekeeper right there, the HR person. That's the gatekeeper. You want to get past them, basically, right? So, and the reason you go on all these interviews that you're going to go on is you want to get where you're comfortable with talking to folks. You want to get where you're comfortable talking to individuals, HR people in the States or whatever, to where, okay, it's easy now, right? Yeah, you're good. Because you imagine you're probably talking to Asian people all day where you're at. Let's just assume that, right? And their culture is different. How they talk is different. Maybe you're speaking their language, whatever. Maybe your home dialect or whatever. And your thinking is different, right? Basically. So when you come here, or when you talk to people here, people in the States, most of the people here are like, I don't want to be bothered. I don't want to hear your problems. I got my own problems. And sometimes, if they hear that in your voice, like, I don't know, I'm just desperate to have a job, they know it, they hear it, and they won't hire you because, oh, this person sounds too desperate. What's wrong, right? I mean, believe it or not, they do that. And take the fact that maybe they're calling, or you're Asian, they can hear it in your voice, right, or your name, let's say. Okay. And they have preconceived, so it's almost like a what do you call it, a pattern. So pattern recognition, almost like everybody does this, by the way. I don't know why anybody doesn't recognize this, but everybody has like a pattern recognition system built in their brain, right? Basically like this. If you see an orange, you have a bunch of oranges. You have like 5 oranges, right? So you have 5 oranges that you see, and one has a bruise on it, right? And you can see, oh, that's bruised. So the first time that you open that orange, you've never seen a bruised one before. You see a bruised one, you open it up. It's mushy. Maybe it doesn't look nice to you. Maybe you don't want to consume it, so you throw it away, or you cut that bruised part out, basically, right? Well, the same thing with people. You have patterns. So obviously they've studied individuals. Maybe they've talked to a lot of people, and they have a pattern built in their brain about certain cultures, about certain individuals, traits, whatnot. And the best thing you can do for yourself as an Asian person is sound like you're an extrovert. Don't sound introverted. I don't say that I talk really fast like talking fast. I would just say what you're demonstrating to them when you have a GitHub site is, hey, I've done something. I've shown the marketplace. I'm just relying on my degree, or my degree to hold me, to move me forward. I'm actually doing something for the market. I'm actually a doer. I'm not just rely on my degree, right? I don't know if you know this or not. When you talk to some recruiters sometimes, or some HR people, you might be talking to a doctor, and they're not. Most of the time they don't tell you, I'm a doctor such and such. Hi, I'm such and such, right, or whatever. Or they don't. If they're like engineering degree, they won't say like, I'm engineer such and such. That only happens, I think, in other countries. It doesn't happen in the States. And like, hey, I'm Bob, right? Engineer Bob, like, okay. Or maybe you're talking to somebody who's a CEO. They won't say CEO such and such, and nobody refers to him as, CEO. They'll say Mr., or they'll say their first name, Bob, or whatever. Or it's a girl, Sally, or Fred, or whatever, Susan, whatever, right? So let's get that out of there. So what you're demonstrating, obviously, when you have a GitHub site and a WordPress site, even a YouTube or a Teachable site, is demonstrating, hey, I've actually taught what I know to the market, and I'm validating, basically. You're just validating your skill set, and that's instantly going to separate you from your competition, because those individuals you're going to school with, those other 99 individuals you're going to school with, they don't have those things. They're not going to have a GitHub site. They're not going to have a WordPress site, or a Teachable site, or a YouTube site. Most likely, they're too not shy. They're not insecure. They're just like, oh, I'm just going to rely on my degree, to get me there, to wherever it is. Or, hey, you know what? I'm just going to work in this country in Asia. I'm not trying to go anywhere else because obviously, if you don't know this, you spend a lot more money when you don't work in your home country. I'll just tell you that. If you live in the States, you're going to spend a lot more money than you would if you live in your home country. Of course, you're going to make more, but you're also going to spend more money. And so that's your competition. Your 99 people out there, they're not doing this stuff. And definitely they're not doing it from the first year. Because why wait until the year 4 to start doing this? It makes no sense. Because, I'm going to race to get a job, right? Everybody here is, they've done 4 years and we're going to race to get a job. All right. Congratulations. Good to go, guys. Yeah, good to go, girls. Yay, right? Okay. Now you're competing with 99 people who have the same degree you do, right? In a saturated market in whatever country you live in, right? Asian country you live in. Well, here's the strategy. Instead of doing that, take the 4 years, right? I know some countries you can't leave until you're a certain age to work anywhere. Well, take those 4 years and develop yourself, get your skill set down, get your marketplace down, get your GitHub site, get your WordPress, get your YouTube, get your Teachable, get a podcast on Anchor or wherever, Spotify, Anchor. Get your skill set down. That way you have 4 years of learning how to do it or, practicing interviews. That way, when you walk in, you're not desperate. After 4 years, you're not desperate to take the first job. And you understand how much you're worth. This is really the tall tale sign here. When you do these type of things, when you talk to recruiters out there and you talk to HR people, you're going to know what you're worth. You're going to know what you're worth. You're going to know what you're worth in different countries. You're really going to know that. Oh, okay, I'm worth X, Y, Z, right? You're really going to understand that. And all that's going to do is give you more confidence. That's what we're doing here, basically, right? So part of it is confidence, part of it is skill set. So I'd like to thank everybody for listening to this podcast and have a great day.